In the next week or two, we'll be able to get into full details on this. Lindsey cannot get a hold of the gentleman. He told him 2.5 weeks ago that he was going to be dead in 2 weeks. The doctors had told him he was very weak and had trouble talking. Other researchers have figured out who this is. Dr. Stan Monteith has confirmed it and actually talked to the other Mr. X, another executive. This gentleman was the director of operations for Atlantic Richfield. And out of respect for the family, because he can't get a hold of him, and he's just surmising that he may have passed, that we're going to wait a few weeks till we get into everything. But his other Mr. X has told him more, and I know who this person is, and I've talked to other people who've talked to him. The gentleman that is dead or dying, who Lindsey can't get a hold of, who told him 2.5 weeks ago he had 2 weeks left, Max, he is the guy that contacted Lindsey years later and corrected information in his book, The Energy Non-Crisis, who was friends with Lindsey for many years, and he reportedly then got fired for doing this. So that's why this is such high-powered info and why Lindsey couldn't give you all this information over the years. But I didn't just put Lindsey on air, even though I trust him. I went and checked it all out. But we can now, we'll just say his last name. People can actually find him all over the news if they know where to look, just like the Hispanic politician who met with Napolitano, who said get 6 months of food and water ready now. We separately were able to confirm who that was, and Williams is like, please don't tell anybody, you know who it is. But we always check on what Lindsey has to say. And so many of these predictions have come true. The reason I wanted to get Lindsey on was because just 2.5 weeks ago, he said, watch, they're going to announce they're going to start devaluing the dollar. The inflation's going to go up. Oil's going to go up to $160 a barrel in the next 8 months. That'll be $5, $6 at the pump. It's already going up. And now, because of all this information being out with the former Atlantic Richfield operations director, who is on his deathbed or deceased, we're not sure. The other gentleman, and don't do any document cam shots right now, folks. I've got to hide this after I'm done, is starting to tell Lindsey a lot more as well. So I'm just going to leave it at that. We got Bob Chapman waiting in the wings with his comments. But Lindsey, are you ready to give folks the gentleman's last name?
Yes, I am willing for you to do that, Alex. It has gotten to the point that the predictions, everything they've ever said over the past 35 years has come to pass exactly like they said it. You are right at $90 a barrel on crude oil this morning. It is going to 150 to 200. They wanted it $200 a barrel. You are going to see massive inflation. Things are happening out there. Now, let me give you the sign. You remember that this man 2 years ago gave me a sign. I've got to give it to the listening audience and remind you that it's happening exactly like he said it. He said to me, he said, Chaplain, watch crude oil prices and you will know the progression. Now, I'm going to add on the words of the elite. Watch crude oil prices, you will know the progression of the elite. They are accomplishing everything they want. They're ready to draw the string. They know exactly what they're doing. They have been able to do it the way they wanted it, and now they already, I told you 2 years ago, the crude oil prices would stay around $70 to $75 a barrel. I said it right here on Alex Jones Show. This elitist individual told me that. He said it'll stay there for 2 years to 2 years and a half. They told me when they were going back up with it, and you're going back up to $4 to $5 a barrel at the gallons at the gas pump, and you're going to hit $200 a gallon a barrel oil, at least $150 in the near future.
Yeah, you said 150 to 200 in the next 6 to 8 months. Here we are, less than a month later, and it's starting to happen. Now, Lindsey, other people have been able to figure out who this is. Of course, I've known through phone calls and other sources and other media people that knew this gentleman and your other Mr. X, and who have talked to him, people I really trust like Dr. Stan Monteith. He's kept the confidence. But I'll just tell you, other people have been able to figure out who it is. Actually, 2 years ago, a political analyst who we routinely interview figured it out. Other people now, because of all these predictions coming true, have dug it out. So we're not really breaking this here, except that we're breaking it and confirming it. But you go ahead and give folks his last name.
His last name is Flom. He was the director for all operations, was given the responsibility of producing the entire Prudhoe Bay oil field on the east side. He also produced all of the oil fields for Atlantic Ridge Field back about 30 to 40 years ago in the country of the United Arab Emirates. Very prominent oil individual. He retired, and then his alternate at Prudhoe Bay finally became the CEO of Atlantic Ridge Field.
And that's your other Mr. X.
This is the Mr. X who has given me most of the material over the past 35 years, and never one time has he ever misled me or ever anything he said.
Okay, well, I don't want to give away the other. I don't want to give away the other person, but they're now telling you a lot more because of what Mr. Fromm, F-R-O-M-M, told you.
The other Mr. X, who is still alive and very well, retired, has told me some things that, Alex, whenever we get ready to do about a 15 or 20-minute sector, I have got one of the most startling things that these men have ever told me in 35 years.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push Franchi back 15 minutes into the next hour. He'll get 45 minutes along with Michelle, our employee who went to the naked body scanners. Will refuse them, so they then literally grabbed her breast and other areas and literally did this to her 8-year-old and 20-month-old. So that's going to be coming up later in the next hour. But I want to... Bob Chapman, who's normally set at this time, and I appreciate him having you on with us today and his time. But let me get Bob Chapman's take on this information. Bob?
Well, it's hard to say in as much as it's all been right, and so I would think it would continue to be correct, and people should listen.
Well, Bob,
I think
thank you very much for saying that. I know you're sticking your neck out, and I do appreciate you very much.
Now, you're the guy sticking your neck out, Lindsey, and unfortunately, you've been proven right. But again, years ago, I did legwork and found out and confirmed that you were telling the truth. I already trusted you in my gut with my discernment, but on something this important, we do journalistic ferreting and probing and snooping around. And just with the info you've already given us, a lot of people will be able to figure out who the other Mr. X is, even more powerful, who is still alive. And we're not sure about the other guy. You're just out of contact. You talked to him 2.5 weeks ago. He said, I got 2 weeks. And you said he could, had trouble speaking. And you've also talked to some of his family who say he's in really bad shape. So we're not sure. But this morning talking to you, you said that you do think in your gut, since you can't get a hold of him, that he may have died.
Yes, they said he was just a very short period of time. But the things that they have told me, Alex, I don't doubt that the president had 34 warships that went with him to India. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
No, that's Associated
we've got
Press.
Some major events taking place in gold and silver. Gold is back up this morning. Oh, my gracious, and silver prices, you can expect them to do exactly what the Mr. X told me. That their currency is gold and silver, and you can expect gold to be on up to $2,000 an ounce in a very short period of time, and you're going to see it in direct correlation with the crude oil prices as they go up.
Okay, Lindsey, I want to give us a prelude to the other information that you said you couldn't talk about with the deathbed Mr. X, Mr. Fromm. Give us as much, and then we'll flesh it out in more detail next hour or later in the hour. Give us as much that you can now tell us that you couldn't talk about a few weeks ago, and then also give us a prelude to what the other Mr. X is now telling you.
Well, first of all, the second Mr. X, the gentleman who is still alive, has definitely verified that all of these things are true. Crude oil prices are going to go up. Gold and silver is going exactly where they said it was going. The fact that, I think on the show that I was on with you about 2 weeks ago, I indicated that you don't pay any attention to what happens in North and South Korea. Don't pay any attention to what happens in the Middle East. Those are just distractions. The real interest right now that you should watch very carefully is China and Russia. And I use the expression, can you imagine Walmart without any items on the shelf marked made in China? The mortgage crisis, positively, you're beginning to see this emerge now, exactly the MBS, the mortgage-backed securities issue. emerging exactly as Mr. X said it, and I gave it on your show 2 weeks ago. So all of these things are fitting into perfect place. And then since Mr. Fromm now probably has passed away, the other Mr. X has gone into some things. You know, the elite over the years have talked with me about a number of things that I just haven't said anything about. And on the last program I was on with you, you kept asking me over and over and over on the program, well, Lindsey, is there anything else that you haven't told us? Well, yes, there were a few things, but out of respect for Mr. Fromm, I did not want to say them until after it was all over with. Well, now supposedly he probably has passed on. These people know where things are that the average person do not know. You have to understand that Mr. Fromm trained his son as a doctor, and as a result of that, when he came down with this massive cancer, his son persuaded him to go the natural route. Oh, I'm sorry, not the natural route, but the conventional route of chemo and radiation. As a result, he's not surviving. The other Mr. X, who is now alive, likewise, back 9 years ago, had cancer in both lungs. The doctor said there's nothing we can do for you. Just keep yourself comfortable. You're going to die. He found out, as these people have the ability of doing, how that this could be taken care of. He went to Europe, and they did. He's totally well. He's completely cured. He's flying his airplane again. He has no symptoms whatsoever. And if a person won't, and this definitely affects a person's finances. I know this is the financial section of the program, but you know, the doctors will get all that you've got, and you'll leave nothing to your children. And they usually get it in the last 6 months to a year before you die. And they're positive. There's no reason for you ever to suffer with cancer. There is no reason for you to ever have the pain of cancer. There is, and they know how to do this. And Mr. Fromm knew it too, but his son persuaded him to go in the other direction. The other Mr. X did not. And he's perfectly well, has been for 9 years, has no reoccurrence. They've told me how to do this. They've told me where it is. I have all of the information. And if there's anyone that you know who has a malignancy, they need not suffer. They need not die. They don't have to be robbed by the medical society of everything they have before they die. And I have a phone number you can call. They've been willing to give it to me. I just confirmed the other day that I'm free to give this out. And folks, there's so much more to what these elitists know than just where gold and silver prices are going and where crude oil prices are going. Interesting. We'll talk about that later, but we know the elite do have a lot of other treatments and things that they've suppressed from the public that do have higher rates of cure, and that they're always trying to suppress things like that, and we will discuss that. But I want to get Bob Chapman's take on the different issues that we've been discussing here. I mean, to have former chief operating officers, heads of operations, CEOs who are at these highest levels, they can just confirm, Bob, but we can already see the writing on the wall. I mean, it's all right here. But it is really frightening that so much of what these Mr. X's have talked about has been so accurate. But I remember back in 2006, this is in my film Endgame, produced 2007, that both Jim Tucker of American Free Press and Daniel Estulin have sources inside Bilderberg. I'll just leave it at that. And I was there at Bilderberg, covering it from outside, and they, matter-of-factly, when I interviewed them both, said they're going to pop the mortgage bubble. And, 2006, nobody was talking about that. It ran up for another year and a half. And they said then they're going to get everybody in debt, and they're going to use that debt to bring in, the global government. They want to bankrupt people to make them more easily managed. They're going to drive up oil prices after that. And then in 2008, months before it started driving up to 150 a barrel, we got the same intel in Chantilly, Virginia, from Bilderberg sources. Tucker did. So, I mean, it's clear they're really in there calling the shots, Bob Chapman.
Well, they certainly are. And, just take oil as an example on a fundamental basis. It's probably worth $60, $65 a barrel, but that doesn't mean anything because the oil market has been manipulated by the OPEC members as well as others for a long time. And if they want to take it to 150, they can do it. And it doesn't take a lot to do it.